Today we are going to start geometry. If you don't understand, it is in your best interest to join my two Zoom sessions, one at 10 a.m. and one at 11:30, so I can help explain how to find the circumference of circles. Also, if you send me an email, please be specific, okay? I did email some of you back regarding your IXL. I am willing to help, so please reach out for help when needed. The formula for circumference of a circle is pi times the diameter or 2 pi times the radius. So when we talk circumference of a circle, we are talking about the outside of the circle. We don't say what is the perimeter of the circle, we say circumference. If you look at the diagram, you will notice the diameter cuts the circle directly in half. And then you will notice the radius goes from the center of the circle to the outside. The radius is half of the diameter. So as always, don't forget your do now. Please watch the screencast and take notes if needed, and then fill out the Google form. You will have to get the questions correct in order to submit it. And if you need help, please fill out the reflection, being specific as to what you need help with. Remember, I am always here via Zoom and email for help. So what we are going to learn today is to find the diameter and the radius of a circle, as well as use the formulas for circumference to sub in our numbers and find the circumference of a circle. The two formulas we are going to use are circumference equals pi times the diameter, or circumference equals 2 pi times the radius. So first, let's talk about the diameter versus the radius. The diameter cuts the circle directly in half, okay? So the diameter is this line I am drawing in red. The diameter cuts it directly in half, and the radius just goes from the outside of the circle to the center. So the radius is half of the diameter. So in this case, if the diameter of the circle is 14, we would do 1/2 of 14, and the radius is 7 inches. Okay, radius is half the diameter. So pause this video and think about this for a second. If the diameter of the circle is 48 centimeters, we want to know what is the radius. Okay, so take a minute, pause the screen, and hopefully you will get it. So hopefully you remember that the radius is half of the diameter. So if the diameter was 48, the radius in this case is 24. So let's look again and see if we can complete the chart. So if the diameter was 4 feet, the radius is half, so the radius is 2 feet. But now let's look at another example. If the radius is 8 feet, we need to know the diameter. So the diameter is double the radius, or 16 feet. Okay? So take a minute and try for 1.5 inches, if that's the diameter, what the radius is. And then if the radius is 3 75 hundredths, what the diameter would be. So hopefully you remembered, you take the diameter and divide it by 2 and get the radius. So the radius would be 75 hundredths inches. And if you're given the radius, you times it by 2 to get the diameter of 7.5 yards. Okay, and you can tell the relationship between radius and diameter just by looking at the diagram. Now we are going to see how this relates to circumference. So we have the two formulas, circumference equals 2 pi r, or circumference equals pi d. When you look at this circle, you should realize that you are given the diameter of 3. So the easiest formula to use is circumference equals pi times the diameter, or pi times 3. So the circumference is 3 pi. And then we are going to evaluate if pi is 3 14 hundredths. So we sub in 3 14 hundredths for pi, and we are multiplying. 3 14 hundredths times by 3 gives me a circumference for this circle of 9 42 hundredths. Okay? So you're using the formula for diameter because you're given the diameter, and then you multiply. Okay, so I put the two formulas for circumference on the screen. Please pause the video for a second and see if you can figure out the circumference of this circle. So hopefully you realize you were given the diameter. So the best formula to use was the first one, pi times the diameter. So you sub in 12 for d and you get 12 pi. And you know the equivalent of pi is 3 and 1400, so you do 12 times 3 and 1400, and you just multiply, and the circumference is 37 and 68 inches. Now, it's the same idea we're finding circumference, but let's look at the formulas. You have 2 pi times the radius, or pi times the diameter. When looking at this circle, hopefully you realize that you were given the radius. So the easiest formula to use is the first one. So you sub in 5 and 3/10 for the radius. And this is just multiplication. So you do 2 times 5 and 3/10 and you get 10 and 6/10 pi. And then we're going to sub in 3 and 1400 for pi. So you take 10 and 6/10 and you multiply by 3 and 1400. And we can round to the nearest hundredth if needed. And we should get the circumference is 33 and 284 thousandths. If we round to the nearest hundredths, it's 33 and 28 centimeters. Okay, so if you're given the radius, you just sub it in for r and follow the formula. Pi will always be approximately 3 and 1400. So once again, I have the formula written on your screen. Pause the video and see if you can come up with the circumference. Hopefully you realize that you were given the radius, so you use the first formula. 2 pi times 7 and 1/10. 2 times 7 and 1/10 gives you 14 and 2/10 times pi. So you take 14 and 2/10 and multiply by 3 and 1400, and you get 44 and 588 thousandths. And if we round to the nearest hundredth, we get 44 and 59 meters. All this is taking a formula and subbing in what you know. The last problem I'm going to do with you is a word problem. Big Ben is a famous clock tower in London, England. The diameter of the clock face is 23 feet. Find the circumference. Round to the nearest tenth. So because I'm given the diameter, I want to use the formula circumference equals pi d. So I sub in 23 for the diameter, and I get the circumference equals 23 pi. And then I sub in 3 and 1400 for pi because that is the approximate equivalency. And then I am going to multiply, and I get the circumference is 72 and 22 feet. And it wanted me to round to the nearest tenth, so I would make it 72 and 2/10 feet. So I was given the diameter. I used the formula for circumference that uses diameter. I tried to keep the video as short and simple as possible. Please try your best. If you need help, it's best you join my Zoom at 10 a.m. or 11:30 a.m. I will help you live. Remember to use the correct formula when given the radius versus the diameter. The diameter cuts the circle directly in half. The radius is half of the diameter. So use either circumference equals pi d or circumference equals 2 pi r. Try your best on the form. It will tell you if you are correct. Okay? Email me with any questions. Thank you.